Uh, Good afternoon. This is old 86 with you again, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about myself. I don't know, it might be funny that way, but I like to talk about myself and my experiences, because I'm not ashamed of them. Well, anyway, I think we were leaving Seattle, and because I'd finished there, and I went down to well, I was looking for a job again, and my younger brother, who was my cow milking buddy, called me on the phone about that time that he was working for Brown and Root Construction. Now, I think everybody's heard of the Brown and Root Construction, because it is about one, I don't know whether it might be the biggest, but it's up there to close to it. And because they have a lot of different divisions, and it's good company to work for. And he had been with them a while because he was the manager of the instrument department on the construction of the biggest power plant. You know, they have different sizes, 100 million kilowatts or 300 million kilowatts or something like that. I don't know. It's a bunch of kilowatts, big generators. But this was one of the biggest. It was 10 stories tall. And they just got the, this was in, oh dear, I think it was, Alabama?
No, I think it was Texas.
Oh, it was Texas.
Yeah. We sort of talked a little bit about this last time.
Yeah.
You had made bitter.
It was Paris, or well, this is getting old as for the birds, you know. My memory's going. It's a good thing I got this to remind me my life history on disc. But anyway, it was in Texas, and it was far enough along so that the instrument department was getting ready to start work. So it was a good opportunity for me to get in on the beginning of the job, really. And they had the main ironwork done, all this 10-story tall structure, and it was beside the river. Well, the other side of the river, where another river was going in another river, because you know it takes a lot of water as a power plant, and they have to be where there's a lot of water, because that's the way a power plant operates. They have a big boiler, and that makes a lot of steam, and they use that steam to turn the generator that makes the power, you know.
Right.
And it's a lot of power. That generator itself, of course, they didn't put that in till about the last year I was there, because they had to have it almost finished. But the footings for the generator must have been about solid reinforced concrete. I think it must have been about 12 or 16 feet long, and about 8, no, it's more than that, it's taller than I was. It must have been about 12 feet tall, solid reinforced concrete. And that's what they put the generator on. So that's getting into some big industrial stuff. A lot of power. So anyway, this steel structure was bare inside. We had, except of course the footings was in there when I started work. But all electrical and other stuff had to be done. So well, my brother could only hire me in as the lowest level, which was a helper, instrument helper in the instrument, well, just a helper in the instrument department. It was about as low as you can get. And I hired in about $5 or $6 an hour as a helper, where before the last job I had out in the civilian world, well, you know, I was only making about $2, and that was what adult people was making that time. The country was in one of their slumps, and jobs was really hard to get. And the job I left was I was working at a TV repair shop for $2 an hour. So you can't blame me for taking $6 an hour for learning a new trade.
Right.
So that's what I did. I packed and ran for instrument fitters. I worked for an instrument fitter. That's the title. And but boy, I learned the trade, and it was only about 4 months or 6 before I got a $3 raise into a full-fledged instrument fitter. And another 6 months after that, I wasn't an instrument fitter, I was an instrument fitter helper. And then 3 months after that, I got another $3 raise as a fitter. And then after, well, a fitter helper, something like that. But then after that, I made fitter, which was another $3. So that job there kind of gave me the idea that construction was, I think I could make more money working with a construction company than I could elsewhere.
Right.
Because the job I left, I was actually, I'd got a job with the Air Force, and I think I told you about that.
Right.
It was at Eglin Air Force Base, and that's when I heard from him. And he offered me the same money I was making, only I could have made more because I was getting ready to get a raise as a manager. But I went up a lot quicker in making money, so you can't blame me too much.
Right.
For changing jobs. And the job of instrument fitter was, see, this particular, and I think most power plants, the controls is either by air or in cases where they're measuring pressure, probably the pressure of the steam or that line or the hot water or cold water, the pressures were usually straight to an instrument. But the instruments, well, I'll explain. They had the main panel was inside the building. It was a big 4x8 sheet of 1/4-inch steel. That was the back of the panel, and it had kind of a little workbench along about the height of a kitchen cabinet. And it had row upon row of faucets, and that's where they got samples of the water and steam and stuff, the hot water and all throughout the system. The engineers could get a sample of the water without going in and climbing and finding a faucet somewhere.
Right.
It's all real handy. And that's where they carefully analyzed, it was a standard thing that they had to analyze that water to make sure it wasn't being contaminated or anything like that, because the big valves, the main steam pipe was a big pipe that went to the steam engine, to the boiler.
Right.
To turn the generator, you know. And, well, we had to make our own panels. And then in various places throughout, we had to make if they had a stand there where they had a special instrument for pressure or something, here and there we'd have to make the stand and have it welded down and install the instruments needed.
Right.
So, and then not only that, but the instrument fitters had to run all these little copper lines. The lines, well, the copper was for the low pressure and stuff like that, but if it was getting into the hot steam and stuff like that they had to know the pressures, we had to use stainless steel, copper tubing, not copper tubing, but stainless steel tubing.
Right.
To our little panels. And we had to install all that copper lines and stainless steel lines with what they called tube track. And it was a little steel, kind of a U-shaped thing, flat and then with two lips on it that was covered with holes all along there, so that you could put a tubing clamp to clamp that stainless steel or copper tubing in there. And that we had to run those just all over to various parts, just all over the plant, so that they could, the engineers and that ran it, the operators.
Right.
And I suppose they had to be engineers. I assumed it. I never asked one of them, but so we had to install that. We would have to run a tube track up, and that had to be welded to a beam or something. So every so long,
Right.
So it was solid, and vibration would never break it off or so forth. It had to be a real durable job.
Right.
And so we had to run those just all over the plant to our instruments.
Right.
Because there was still, they might have had that big one water plant or panel with all the faucets. But that was just the one for analyzing. We had panels here and there on the different operating points that was needed to have a check all the time, be it for the engineers and operators and stuff to make sure that everything was running good, and if they had trouble or anything they could easily track it down. So it was a good job, interesting job. It's like the time, yeah, it was the time we had to put some kind of an instrument. See, this is 10 floors off the ground.
Huh.
And we needed an instrument that was just off the top edge down about 6 feet. And I forget what it was for, but my helpers, I was a fitter.
Right.
And my helpers, they was too scared to get off the edge there. Well, you can imagine standing 10 floors up to how far down it looked. So I said, well, if you don't have the nerve to do it, you're going to have to lower me on one of these bosun chairs, I guess they call it. It was just a board with a rope going over it like it'd have on a swing, and then going up to the top. So I had them lower me down, and I installed it. And not that I liked the job myself. You can imagine sitting on a board and hanging on a rope 10 feet off the ground.
Right.
Well, all I can say that being raised on a farm and climbing up that big barn and everything, I did it. But I won't say I wasn't nervous about it. I was. I'll admit it. So anyway, that was one of the parts of that job that I distinctly remember.
Right.
But all in all, it was good work and good pay, and it took 4 years. It takes about 4 years to build a plant, and well, during that time, I'd bought this here. It's a little store that had been closed up, and it was vacant, and so I just bought the store and converted it into a nice little house. And I had a nice, pretty big backyard, and just across the road was where my brother lived. He had bought a 2-story house. Well, it was maybe half a block through a bare yard, and it was a lot of houses around, but for some reason that was a bare yard, and I could see his house. And so it was real handy because we could ride to work together, and we'd always got together good. He was my younger brother.
Right.
And he never missed a time when we was milking those cows up until I was 18. And I think I already told you about the minute I turned 18, I went in the Navy,
right.
And I went all through that.
Right.
And a year later he went in the Army, and he went in as a sergeant, I think, but I know he was a sergeant when he got out. Maybe he was like me, he made a few ranks while he was in there, but...
Right.
Anyway, he would, I guess he would, when he got out, he got in this working for Brown and Root. And so after that job, see, that was in Texas. But, you know, I need to straighten it out on my first wife. I don't know whether I told you that when I worked the one job along the Canadian border on the radar situation, the next job I got on was working for the Army in an Army Air Force base, and I was away from home a lot.
Right.
Because you get out on a job like that, that's where you are. You're on per diem and staying in a hotel and stuff. Well, I guess she got really mad at me because I wouldn't rent her a bigger, nicer apartment or house. Because heaven, she had a nice place to live. It was, to my notion, as good as anything.
Right.
And so, and by the time that I got through with that, I'd got the notice that that I was no longer married. And the way she had come to visit me every, is it 9 months gestation period for babies?
Yeah.
I'd had 3 kids, a boy and, no, 2 boys and a girl. And I'd really never met them because when I got out I was already divorced.
Right.
From the last job. And well, I'd never heard that they had moved somewhere, and I wasn't married anyway. And she was mad at me.
Right.
And wanted to have me beat up with some of her boyfriends that she made while I was gone. And well, it was when I was up in Seattle, I was lonesome. I mean, you know, a single male.
Right.
I mean, they're bound to get lonesome for a woman. And I was busy working. I didn't have time to get around too much. But so I saw an ad in a magazine where it says to find it was, "Are you lonesome?" Well, sure I'm lonesome. So I answered the ad, and I had this one girl back in Florida that I got a letter from. Well, I got quite a few letters, but this one from Florida really sounded like a real nice person. And she was only about 16 or 18. I forget, but she was of age, let's say.
Right.
And we wrote together for a while, because I was, I was busy working. This was in Seattle, before I left Seattle. And so she wrote me a letter and says, well, oh, she was the daughter of a sharecropper. Well, you know what a sharecropper is? That's a person that, you'll have a farm that's run by a family or a man, you know.
Right.
And that man has more land than he can handle. He will break up his land into imaginary patches and hire somebody or somebody that's looking for work as a sharecropper. And they have a house on each of those little plots. And that's what he was. He was a sharecropper, and he was to go and raise crops on shares. What that farmer could raise, and I don't know. I imagine the farmer got the highest share naturally,
right?
Because he had the big hammer over the head, you know. And like all people that hire other people, you know. If they have money in that, they don't want to spend any more money. This is in general.
Right.
It's my experience that they're real stingy with their money, and they hire people as low as they can and work them. And well, we won't get into that because that might not look too good on my record. Well, I got a letter from her daughter, and she says, well, I don't know what to do. I really like you, but there's a guy that I was writing to that had a big ranch up in Canada that wants me to go up. He likes me and he wants to get married. And please let me know. I'd rather marry you. Well, I thought she was real cute. And it just happened that my oldest brother, Duane, happened to be visiting with me. And he'd stopped in between some job or something, because he was a journeyman electrician.
Right.
He had worked himself up, so he was pretty high in electrical construction type with the IBEW or whatever it is, the union, you know, Electrical Union of America. And so he happened to be there, and he says, oh, you want to go to Florida and get married? Let's go, I'll take you. So we hopped in the car and we went to Florida non-stop. Well, no, we stopped to eat and gas up. So we pulled in this farm, and Millie, that was her name, and her father's name was Horace, and her mother's name was Trudy, and they had she had a younger sister, and a couple of younger boys. Well, one of the younger boys eventually, when he grew up, he got to be postmaster of Defuniak Springs. That's where they lived, out north, about, maybe 6-10 miles out in the country, going north from Defuniak Springs, Florida. And so everything was fine. So she packed what few things she had, and it was just like a little paper bag full of clothes. And we headed back. We pulled in there, and I met her family, and think we might, we didn't even have supper. We just said hello and goodbye. Headed back to Seattle. Oh no, we went through Las Vegas. Well, it's kind of a long way around. But we went through Las Vegas. And right in the middle of the main highway, it seemed like. We're in town. There's a kind of a building there, a little building that says marriage, 24 hours a day. So we stopped and got married, and it only took, 10, 15 minutes, and then took off again. And it was a legal, real marriage. But lately I noticed reading an article about that little place, and it was ran by some really high, I forget the name, I'd have to look that up, but it was a real well-known knight of the old round table, Lancelot or something.
Right.
It was run by the descendants of that real famous person. I didn't know that, but I thought that was pretty good, being married by somebody that famous with a family like that.
Right.
So we got us a nice little apartment there in Seattle, and so that's my little episode there where I ran out of gas on the motorcycle. She's the one that I left at the gas station.
Right.
I was married then, and so, but she took it real nice. She was a real nice person. And how many minutes?
Yeah, we can stop right there.
Okay. Oh, that's a good place to stop.
Right.
Because now I get into a change.
Right.
Of leaving Seattle.
Well, you've already covered leaving Seattle, but...
Did I cover going to Seattle on a motorcycle all the way to Florida?
Yes.
I did?
Yes.
Okay. So next time we can, and I've already said about my experiences of working for Eglin Air Force Base.
Right.
Okay, so I'll go from there. That was then going to the power station.
Yeah, ready to talk about that?
And I've got that. Okay, I'll know where to start in then.
Okay.
Trying to drag out of my memory for the next one.
Okay.